What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel.
Fans and media say a lot of things about Kirby Smart, but they can't really argue about the recruiting. It is locked down at Georgia. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking dogs. We got Palmer Thoms on the line from Dogs 247 Sports. Palmer, how you doing tonight?
Been a busy day here following the recruiting. Fourth straight class that if it stays this way, fourth straight class that Kirby Smart will have signed that ranks among the top 5, and with 17 players putting pen to paper, it's been quite the whirlwind today.
So to be able to haul in a class that high with only 17, obviously the per player recruiting ranking is off the charts. Highlight some of those guys that maybe since the last time we talked have just come into the fold recently.
Yeah. First off, I think it was a big deal for Georgia. They had 16 commits coming into the day, and had expected 13 of those to sign, had 14 of those. Nazir Stackhouse, who's a defensive lineman, they were expecting him to sign in February. He made the decision to bump that up and sign today. And, just ask LSU and, several teams around the country. But, getting those guys that are committed to put pen to paper and not flip is a big deal. So, that's not the thing that's going to make storylines, be the breaking news. But it is certainly a big deal to Georgia, Kirby Smart and Georgia fans, that those 14 players decided to put pen to paper. That leaves 2 commits left unsigned, Broderick Jones and Cedric Van Pran, pair of offensive linemen out of Georgia and Louisiana, respectively. They'll sign in February. Jones is being heavily recruited by some other schools, Van Pran as well. So I know that'll be a task for new offensive line coach Matt Luke to hang on to those guys in the next coming couple of weeks. First commit of the day, first signing of the day was Georgia's top commit coming into the day, Mikhail Sherman, who's the number 2 outside linebacker in the country. He got his papers into Athens around 7:30 this morning. So he was up and at it, getting it on and, ready to, try and help Kirby Smart and his, these coaches finish out a recruiting class. Our national recruiting analysts at 247 have compared him to a former Kirby Smart product, C.J. Mosley, who Smart coached in the early 2010 era at Alabama during his time as a defensive coordinator there. Mosley was later drafted in the first round and has put together quite the NFL career. So that was certainly a big one. The only linebacker that Georgia signed, only outside linebacker, they signed one there and did not sign an inside guy today. Smart felt pretty confident with how those 2 rooms stack up. Looks like only 1 or 2 players will be departing via graduation or transfer portal. So I think, for Georgia to get, that one outside linebacker and a very good one in that signing was big for them.
Palmer Thoms on the line from Dogs 247 Sports. Of course, we encourage you to check out their work right there covering Georgia athletics, Georgia football with the 2nd-ranked class in the SEC, number 4 in the nation, coming off a year, number 2 in the SEC, number 2 in the nation. This has been the run under Kirby Smart, arguably the top recruiting results in college football. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia have all been right there over the last several years. You mentioned Sherman, obviously. He's out of Washington, D.C. If you run down the Georgia recruiting class, obviously you're going to see Georgia and Florida all over the place. But I see a couple of California kids, some of your top kids from Texas. It's really become, for as well as Mark Richt did, and he brought in top 5 to 12 classes all the time as well. It's just been ratcheted up just a notch, and maybe because it's become a little bit more of a national brand, it seems.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at the 2017 signing class, one of Smart's first full classes that he brought in, had Jake Fromm as one of the guys, and you look at that class, and 17 of those guys were from in-state. Well, now they've got 17 guys signed today, and like you mentioned, several of those are from out of state. Chad Lindgren, big offensive lineman signee for them. Was important for Georgia to get him signed, along with Tate Ratledge, who's an in-state product. But you mentioned the California kids. Kendall Milton big signee for Georgia. He was committed to the Bulldogs earlier this summer. I believe it was in either late July or early August that he announced that he was going to go to Georgia. He's stuck to that, and did great things in his senior year. Other big California kid for them today was Jermaine Burton. He was a long time, several months committed to LSU, wide receiver, number 8 ranked wide receiver out of California. And he, rumors had been swirling around that he may be, backing out of his commitment to LSU. He ended up flipping to Georgia today and signing with the Bulldogs. So, like I mentioned, it was important for Georgia to get those guys signed that were already committed. But, getting guys like Jermaine Burton, he was a big one out of California. And then you mentioned Florida as well. They've got 4 guys out of the state of Florida, brings their total to 14 out of the Sunshine State for next year. So that, that's definitely an area that Kirby Smart, and give credit to assistant coaches, James Coley, offensive coordinator, wide receivers coach Cortez Hankton, special teams coach Scott Fountain. They've got connections down there in the Florida, Miami area, particularly Arian Smith, who's a product out of Lakeland, Florida. Not necessarily South Florida, but he's a speedy wide receiver who, chose Georgia today over Alabama. He's, fun fact about Smith there is that he is actually a member of the U20 world record 4x100 track team alongside now Georgia track star Matthew Bowling. Those guys put together quite the show at the on the track. And so Smith, it was important to Smith that he could run track at Georgia. And so Kirby Smart said today that one of their big selling points was the success that Mecole Hardman, now is an NFL Pro Bowler as of last night. He, was able to run track and, put together quite the football career as well. So definitely a big selling point for Arian Smith. And then always got to talk about the quarterback of the class, Carson Beck, former Mr. Football Award winner, state champion in the highest classification there in Florida, out of Jacksonville. He committed to Georgia. He's been committed to Georgia and signed with them today. So always great to sign a quarterback in the class. They, we're hoping to get 2, possibly with CJ Stroud out of California, but he ended up going to Ohio State, chose Ohio State over Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, and USC. But, like we said, anytime you can get a quarterback prospect in the works, especially when you've got an upperclassman quarterback like Jake Fromm, who's a junior this year, either will be going into his final season or, possibly leaving after the Sugar Bowl. It's always great to get a high-level quarterback. He's a top 10 pro-style quarterback.
Beck is the 8th rated quarterback in the nation, pro style, out of Jacksonville, 32nd rated player in Florida. Of course, Florida, arguably with California and Texas, the best talent and the most volume of talent in the nation in high school football. Have you had a chance to see any of Beck's highlights? What kind of quarterback is he?
Yeah, I watched a little bit especially of his junior year. That was the year that he won Mr. Football and put together the state championship run. They lost several pieces off that team, so it wasn't as great of a senior year. But he put up over 5,000 yards, 59 touchdowns in his 2 years as a starter. So he's really accurate, and he's got a little bit of mobility too. It reminds me of Jake Fromm in a lot of ways, especially a high school Jake Fromm who played in more of an open offense at Houston County. He reminds me of him in a lot of ways. And, I know to a lot of Georgia fans, they're thinking, oh, well, Jake has, been down. Might want to see a dual threat quarterback, something to mix it up. Jake Fromm has been successful at Georgia. And so Kirby Smart's going to target guys like that. One of his first quarterback prospect that he brought in was Jacob Eason, who's a pro style quarterback. Jake Fromm's pro style. And, obviously Justin Fields was dual threat. Look how that one worked out. It, didn't go Georgia's way. So I think, between the guys that they brought in last year and Dwan Mathis, who's, more of a pocket passer than he is a mobile threat. He's got some legs, but Carson Beck is definitely a pro style quarterback that really fits Georgia's system well.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you love the game that we love and talk each and every day. Palmer, we know that this is the time of year in which, with the bowl game And with coaching changes, possibly on the coaching staff to a certain extent, and obviously National Signing Day, you've got a ton to do, got a ton to write. So we appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.